Today I'm talking with Dr. Renee Smith-Maddox. She's a clinical professor at the USC Suzanne Dworak Peck School of Social Work. A few years ago, she and her colleagues designed a social work class on advocacy and social change to help master's level students learn about policy. This spring, one work group of her students were veterans. Two members of that group, Justin Lee and Greg James, are here today to share about their learning experience. We're so proud that they're now alums, MSW's class of 2020. So first, for Renee, I'd like to ask you to share with us a little bit about how you settled on homelessness as the topic to help your students learn about policy change.
Well, I want to first say thank you, Brenda, for inviting us to this interview. And it's wonderful to reconnect with Justin and Greg, who are now proud alums of USC. Well, you know, there was many reasons why I selected homelessness as a topic for our students to explore in this class. First and foremost, I wanted to create a space for our students to get connected to this grand challenge for social work, because I thought it was an opportunity for them to explore all of the dimensions and the complexity of this particular wicked problem, and to see how indeed they can contribute to the conversation and to the knowledge and to the skills that's needed to prevent and to end the pathways that people may find themselves experiencing where they end up homeless. The other thing was that I also knew for many students, this was not a topic that maybe they were exploring. They had many interests, but I wanted to show that no matter what population you were interested in, that they too have a pathway to homelessness, and to understand the policies that impacts them, as well as the opportunities for social change, and how they could learn ways in which to advocate for the population. And I think that the other piece was that from a methodological and analytical standpoint, that this lens on homelessness will allow them to understand what intersectionality means. The intersection of many identity factors that come into play that impacts someone's life course and the experiences that they have on this path to homelessness. Some people find themselves in a homeless situation for a long term. It's continuous. Some it's intermittently, it's due to circumstance. And so there's no one way to explain how homelessness comes to be. There's many factors, and you need to look at it from a standpoint, how are people impacted by their race? How are they impacted by their gender? And any other identity factors that one could think about, their sexual orientation, and start to see what does the policy landscape look like that supports or does not support this group. For the class, they had an option to select a particular group.
I kind of understand that the way you designed the class, it included a theory that allowed you to guide the students through different phases of the involvement and the thinking process. Could you explain a little bit about how it relates to the theory that you used?
Exactly. One of the things that the students may not have realized, but from a pedagogical approach, I tapped into what is called the 5 E's instructional model. And this is a model that consists of cognitive stages of learning. And it comprises engaging, exploring, explaining, elaborating, and evaluating.
And I also want to thank Justin and Greg for taking the time to come and share with us. We got a good perspective from Renee about the concepts and how the course was designed. What did you experience? I'd love for you guys to tell us a little bit about, first of all, how did you choose the topic area that you were going to focus on for the assignments?
First, we all happen to be veterans. The group is comprised of 3 Army veterans and a Marine, to be exact. In addition to our military service, we also all had the wonderful experience of serving the homeless veteran community while assigned at our internships. Also, we have additional professional experience in working with the homeless population. So those reasons really inspired us to do something tailored toward the homeless epidemic amongst the veteran population here in LA County. Lastly, we had one group member who was brave enough to share his experience with homelessness as a veteran. And once he shared that with the group, it really motivated us to focus on the topic and, you know, do our best job to shed light on the services offered to the homeless veteran community amongst veterans and things that we could possibly can do to help better the situation.
That makes sense, and that sounds like a great set of reasons. I'd love to hear a little bit about how you went about designing, because I know the one major part of the assignment is to end up creating a policy change campaign. Could you talk a little bit about how you approached that and what you ended up deciding to do?
Yeah, so I can speak on behalf of the group for that. So primarily what we initially thought of was to pick a certain policy that affects the homeless veteran population. And the program that we ended up tackling was the HUD-VASH program, which is a benefit that is available for homeless veterans so that they can receive vouchers to ultimately access housing at low cost to the veterans. So after we identified the program, what we did was we started to just gather information on possible solutions to, or, you know, different ways that we can kind of enhance the program to cast a wider net and be more inclusive, that we're collectively working together. So by the definition, you know, constantly changing, what it did, it essentially changed the amount of veterans that were eligible for the HUD-VASH program. So you can only imagine how frustrating it may be. The audience that we were trying to, you know, get the attention of, and then ultimately our approach and how we were going to, you know, address the problem, offer solutions, and, you know, how we would get there ultimately.
So who did you decide to focus on, and what were you hoping to accomplish with your campaign?
So what we did collectively as a group is that we created a petition, and it was an online petition where you gather just online signatures from, you know, the constituents in LA County. And after the petition was created, we then started to reach out to different veteran service organizations, US Vets, Volunteers of America, Los Angeles, New Directions for Veterans are a few of the organizations that we reached out to. And just because we know that these organizations, you know, assist homeless veterans in obtaining, you know, X, Y, and Z benefits. So we tried to muster as much support that we could from organizations. And then secondly, we looked into reaching out to 2 particular Congress members, Congressman Ted Lieu, who represents the 33rd District in California, and Congressman Mark Takano, who represents the 41st District in California. And the reason we reached out to those 2 in particular is that Congressman Ted Lieu, he is a Air Force veteran himself and is extremely active in the veteran policy sphere, where he introduces various bills to ensure further funding for veterans, to open more homeless shelters, or just have more accessibility for homeless veterans in different shelters across, you know, the LA County region. And then Congressman Mark Takano, he actually is the chairman of the Committee of Veterans Affairs. So again, both these individuals, we deemed as very influential in the veteran policy sphere. What we found out is that there were thousands of these HUD-VASH vouchers that were going unused every year in LA County. So, that's a huge deficiency in itself, where the Department of Veterans Affairs and the Department of Housing and Urban Development are, able to provide these housing vouchers, but there's so many of these vouchers going unused.
I wonder if you could each share a little bit about some of the things you learned from this project, and if there's anything you took away that you feel will be helpful for you in the future.
In our research, we came across articles that demonstrated the fact that certain communities were against certain communities were against affordable housing being built for veterans in their communities. And that was extremely difficult for us to hear because, again, we have a low inventory, and one of the best ways to get our current homeless veterans into housing is to build more affordable housing throughout LA County. But as Justin stated, that stigma is a challenge and something that we collectively as a community need to educate landlords about these false stigmas so that we can overcome that obstacle and house more of our veterans.
That's a really good point. You really learned what some of the underlying challenges that make it so difficult, and it made it clearer for you about where the focus might need to be. Justin.
So I think one of the biggest takeaways that I had from the policy advocacy campaign and the class in itself was just having more confidence in our individual and groups' abilities to really advocate for more change, and also just understanding the different interconnected agencies and individuals that it really requires to enact some sort of change.
So what it says to me is that embedded in the course, it created a lab, if you will, that allowed them to develop their policy advocacy practice, but also to start to see how they could take that practice into the real world and start to influence. And influencing change is a process that has many different dimensions, if you will, and also to come to grips with the realities of the policy landscape. So to hear how they navigated that and how they made sense of that terrain was a telling factor of how this kind of a learning environment, that it bridges theory and practice, if you will, and allows students to go out into the real world quicker than just waiting to finish a course or a program, but you could get out into the real world and initiate change quicker than you think.
Well, guys, you're armed with what you need to, so we're expecting lots of great things from you. And again, thank you so much for taking the time to share with us. We really appreciate you and look forward to your success.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.